If you're wondering why did the US give cluster bombs to Ukraine, it's because we're out of ammo to give, and it's all we've got left are these stockpiles of cluster munitions. That is why the United States is violating international law, a treaty that we haven't signed, but 120 other countries have signed, not to use cluster munitions, and yet we are giving them to Ukraine because, according to both Biden and Jake Sullivan, we are out of...
You think we shouldn't give them the cluster bombs? That's your position?
Well, I wouldn't have put ourselves in this position. I think it's degrading to America's moral authority to be violating international law, to be using and endorsing cluster munitions, but we put ourselves in this situation.
The counter to that, of course, is Russia's using them on Ukraine soil. This is Ukraine soil. Don't they have the right to defend themselves and use the same weapons that the invader is using?
That's disputed.
If the Russians were using them, would you think it would be fair for the Ukraine, since they're being invaded?
The thing that I find curious about these accusations is that when people talk about these examples of the Russians using cluster munitions, they talk about an example here or an example there. There are these isolated cases, which doesn't sound right to me. It seems to me that if you're going to use cluster munitions, why wouldn't you just use them at scale? That is what the Ukrainians are going to be doing now, because again, it's all we've got left to give them. Now, what the Russians have said is that in retaliation, they're going to start using cluster munitions at scale. 120 countries signed an agreement not to use cluster munitions. It was because they linger on the battlefield long after, and you have kids walking on them and civilians get killed.
We're still cleaning them up in many locations around the world. They should be banned forever. Yeah, I agree.